everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much, Eve. And thank you, Sandy, for that incredible presentation. So excited for many reasons. And just to give a little background of myself and why I'm even on the stage and in the metaverse world, I actually was introduced to Bitcoin early on around 2013 with the opportunity to mine Bitcoin. And that didn't work out so well. And in 2017, when the Bitcoin train really took off, I said to myself, I'm not going to miss the train twice as it relates to blockchain. And so I decided to do some research and came across Ethereum and took a chance on that technology as a casual investor in early 2020 and went down the rabbit hole of white papers and these various blockchain technologies and protocols because I really wanted to learn from an investor standpoint what were the ones that were going to be sustainable and be around for years to come. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn and the more excited I became as a creator. And as Eve mentioned, I started in my career as a fashion designer after deciding while I was pursuing my PhD in clinical psychology that I was going to help people through my love of fashion and creativity. And I wanted to bring blockchain and fashion together and create this new economy from collateralizing couture. And the more I discovered about the space and the opportunities that were in front of us, I wanted to share with as many people as possible. And having been a creative entrepreneur for decades, I saw this as a viable way for creatives and artists and entrepreneurs to develop tools to help sustain themselves and do what they love and be financially sustainable and environmentally sustainable along the way. And so then I joined the space as an educator, podcaster, advisor, and speaker. And as I was doing all of that, I became approached by creators. Okay, great. I'm interested. What do I do next? And then I decided to take the plunge as a creator in Web3 to understand the technical ins and outs, to be inside the bubble, to better guide creators through the entire process and journey. And that led me to creating Raindrops NFT Art House. And I loved how Eve has started the discussion around diversity and how Sandy concluded it around diversity because it's so important that we are intentional as we step into this new paradigm and we create spaces and opportunities for everyone. You know, as a woman of color, as an immigrant from Jamaica, as a mom, you know, as someone in the fashion industry, couture, I mean, you continue to create the niches. There are many, many obstacles that laid in front of me that I had to figure out on my own. But what if we right now have the opportunities to see these obstacles and these walls and bring them down as we build and create in the space? And that's what I think that we should do. I love that Sandy mentioned that this next iteration of the internet is about ownership. It is about a more decentralized internet, adoption as well between creators, builders, and innovators, and those that support these innovators and creators, such as these VC backers and other financiers. It is so important that not only we create a more diverse space from the onset, being intentional in giving access, is to continue to educate on both the pros and cons of stepping into this space. Because as we know, we are in the very early stages, as Sandy mentioned. We are at the very beginnings of the wild, wild west. And we have the responsibility to create a protective space, to look at the areas that could be vulnerable to those that are coming into this space. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to bring up our panelists that will be sharing how we can protect ourselves as individuals in Web3, our assets, as well as our digital wallets. And so if I can have our speakers join me on stage, we have Anoop, Natasha, Paul. If you can come on stage, that will be great. And Sandy, I believe you'll be joining us as well. Yay! And I am broadcasting from sunny, it's actually sunny today, sunny Pennsylvania. I'm a new resident here, been here for a few years, and I've lived in many places on my journey, entrepreneurial journey. And I would love for our speakers to share where are they broadcasting from, and then if they can give an introduction of themselves, a brief introduction to the audience.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natasha Bansgopaul. I am a fintech founder and entrepreneur across the world of alternative assets, blockchain, and digital assets. I'm also a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow detailed to the National Institute of Standards of Technology, NIST, heading up AI transparency research. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm from New York. I am in New York. I'm also pleasantly surprised it's a little sunny today, Nova. And I am also from the Caribbean. So I'm St. Lucian and Guyanese. So bop, bop, bop. I'm just kind of bigging up there and thrilled to be here and connect with all of you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Natasha. And yes, big ups to the Caribbean, whoever else is in the house.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Oh, also,
Thanks
I
so
mentioned
much.
I was an entrepreneur, but I actually didn't mention my company. So my company's name is VegaX, and we are a cryptocurrency infrastructure and index platform. So we build tech solutions to connect traditional investors and institutions to the world of digital assets. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that as well. And Anoop, would you like to share where you're broadcasting from and a little about yourself?
Sure, that'd be awesome. So thanks. First of all, thanks to you for inviting me here. This is a really cool experience to really kind of participate in. I'm Anoop Nannra. I'm calling from Sunnyvale. It's out here in the Bay Area. It's actually sunny outside. A little bit about me. I've been in the blockchain space since about 2014, when I was back at Cisco and working in corporate strategy, M&A, technology strategy, advisory, what have you. And I started asking the question, what would Bitcoin look like if the fabric of the internet itself were blockchain and Bitcoin aware? And given that roughly 70% of the world's internet is powered by by Cisco devices, I thought that was a really meaningful question to go and ask. And so that set me on the journey. I went to the board, the CEO, the CFO. We landed some budget, built the blockchain business from the ground up. At Cisco, we deployed some of the most advanced blockchain technology, even by today's standards back then. Deployed a massive network, and we were tracking 350 million assets in real time around the world, which was pretty exciting, pretty amazing. In that time, I launched and co-founded the Trusted Iot Alliance, which was the world's first blockchain and IoT industry consortium. And we did things like blockchain enabling an electric Jaguar and driving it from Barcelona to Europe, Barcelona to Berlin, in a fully decentralized fashion. So everything you can imagine, when you introduce a car and charging on blockchain and actual movement, we kind of did that years and years ago. Also helped start the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and then moved over to AWS, where I was responsible for the blockchain partner business. Grew that business 4x in 2 years, and about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, launched the Ronin X Foundation, which is a metaverse peer-to-peer decentralized infrastructure industry group. And what we're doing at the Ronin X Foundation is bringing together infrastructure providers, in bringing together manufacturers of electronics, and putting together an ecosystem and use cases and protocols for a truly next-gen, metaverse user experience. And so doing that, and at the same time, I left AWS about 4 weeks ago to go build a startup in the Web3 space. That's a little about me.
Wow, I love that. And we have two past AWSs here in this room, which is really interesting. And I love that we have someone here from the fintech space, and really excited to hear what Natasha has to say. And I love that, Anoop, you're focusing on infrastructure because, we have ideas and we want to build, and it's so important that the foundation is solid of what we are creating, and having those individuals like yourself that's focusing on a really strong infrastructure is so important. And I'm going to have Sandy share some more about herself as well, and then we'll move to Paul.
Thanks so much, Nora. Nova. I really appreciate it. And I don't know, I'm not from the Caribbean, but I wish I was. I don't know if that counts or not. But
It does. It does.
it does. Okay, great. That's great. And much like I am here today, I'm sitting actually in a hotel room in Silicon Valley. I'm doing a whole set of in real life meetings, which I have to tell you is funny because I booked all my meetings back to back to back. And then I went back and I was like, oh no, I'm in the real world. I have to actually have time to move around. So I had to resume my whole schedule because I forgot what it was like working in the real world. As I said, I recently left Amazon. I left Amazon back in the December timeframe. I'm now working for a company called Unstoppable Domains, which is all about digital identity. At Amazon Web Services, I ran and created um, our division supporting enterprise. So I got to be an entrepreneur inside of Amazon Web Services to do that. And then I switched over to regulated industries and public sector doing all go to market. But I've been a startup founder. I've worked on blockchain. I've worked on artificial intelligence. I've worked on IoT, AR, and VR, which is basically everything we're experiencing today, right? All those technologies come to play. And I just had to come and participate in the creation of Web3. I'm also a mom of two daughters, both of whom are getting tons of training right now on what is crypto, what is Web3, what does all this stuff mean, because I want them to be leaders and strong voices in this space as well. So thank you so much for having me, Nova and Eve. It's an honor and I love the platform. So thanks so much.
And absolutely love what you're doing, supporting them. And, as a mom, and I have two boys, two girls, I stress to them how important it is for them to have this education because we're building for their generation. And to have them involved now is also really exciting as a mom. So love that you shared that with us, Sandy, and excited to have you here. And a little tidbit, I heard about Unstoppable Domains back in 2020. So super, super excited when I found out that you were going to be here today. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
And Paul, can you join us and share where you're from and more about your background?
Hey, Noah, and everyone. Nice to meet you all here. I'm Vijender, based out of Los Angeles, California. And it's sunny and bright here as well. But then it's sunny and bright here in Southern California almost all the time. So that said, I work as a field chief information security officer at Halborn, which is a cybersecurity firm focused on crypto and blockchains. I personally have a background in computer science and specialize in cybersecurity and security architecture. Spent the last 15 plus years working in cybersecurity in a variety of roles. And in my current role at Halborn, me and the team at Halborn, we work with various crypto protocols from layer ones to DeFi protocols to NFT and metaverse platforms, various startups and even enterprise companies who are all trying to adopt and build on uh, blockchains as the foundation layer. And we help them with all things cybersecurity. And at Halborn, we believe cybersecurity itself can be a true enabler and a bridge for bringing everyone into the crypto land and making sure it- we see the true potential of blockchains.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I love how Eve is really staying true to her platform as it relates to diversity, not just with the various individuals and where we're from and where we're broadcasting from, but our backgrounds in areas of interest and expertise. And I'm super excited to see how we balance this out today and the information that we're going to share as it relates to security and our content and how do we protect this and what does it mean and what does the future look like. And so thank you, Paul, for that. Excited for all of our speakers to be here. Thank you again for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Let's kick this off with the first question. So let's start with the passion for frontier tech. How did you all end up working in this field? This question is for everyone. Sandy, could you please provide your answer first?
Yeah, I think my answer is really interesting because I wanted to be an astronaut. My dad, when I was young, actually taught me all about space and he was an engineer and I thought for sure I was going to be the first female astronaut, to land on the moon. But then actually my grandmother got sick. So I changed from being an astronaut to a doctor. I went to Duke undergrad. And as I was at Duke, I was studying all the things that were medical. I had to do an assignment where they used some of the chemicals and anesthesia, and I passed out. And it turns out, Nova, that I am allergic to all of those things in hospitals. So if I go visit you, let's say you got sick or Paul got sick, I would usually pass out in the hospital. So I'm really not a good candidate to be a doctor. Could you imagine if in the I greeted you in the exam room and I passed out? My advisor, though, at Duke was part of the Duke Medical School, but he was also the first kind of tentative dean of the computer science department because it really didn't even exist. So he showed me a world where I could use computers to do testing so that they didn't have to test people or animals. They could test in a computer situation. And I got addicted. And that's how I was able to get started in this tech field. It all started with wanting to be an astronaut, going to a doctor, to a technologist, and I'm so happy because I do think I found my purpose in life through tech.
I love that. And I love how we share how we both started in this field. I too was pre-med. That's actually how I met my husband and moved into the research and clinical side as it relates to grad school. But obviously we weren't meant to be doctors. And actually I'm super, super sensitive when I see people get hurt. And so I'm glad that path did not continue. Sandy, could you also, thank you for sharing that. Could you also share what you feel the need is for more diversity, why more diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also why there's a need for better ownership and a fair economy as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I came from AWS, from Amazon, the Web 2 world. And, women are about 25, 26% of that world, which I still think is too low. But I was shocked when I came over to Web 3. I didn't know that the percentages were 8 to 9%, single digits for diversity. That's not just women. That's racial diversity. I mean, that's diversity overall, 8 to 9%. That is an abomination in my mind. And this is why I started Unstoppable Women of Web3, especially because we're early on. If we don't have those voices early on, I think there's going to be a challenge. And it's not just because I'm a woman. All the studies indicate, all of them, whether you're looking at McKinsey or Deloitte or I mean, every single study shows over and over again that diversity yields greater innovation. And that's what we need here in the space. All these great panelists talked about the need for, more innovation, more change. And I think that's what really, in my mind, makes a difference here. We've got to have, I don't think it's an option. We have got to have diverse voices speak up, be examples. I really believe if you can see it, you can be it. One of the other reasons I came into the space, I wanted to show others that women can come into the space. And it's really fascinating to me, Nova. When I first came over, I did a LinkedIn post. I had 1,500 people who applied for roles at my company from that first post. Only 2% of them were women. Very unusual for me. Even at AWS, I had the most diverse team of all my peer VPs. I couldn't understand what was going on, and I soon discovered that women just didn't really know what Web3 was. I had many of them say, do you have a Swiss bank account now? Are you hiding money? Are you laundering money? Or, I don't know if you've had the same thing, or, things like, I just don't understand what it is. And until I meet 10 of the 10 check boxes, I'm not going to enter. We've got to change that game. And the reason I think identity is so important is that in the Web 2 world, and this, people are selling your data. They're making money off your data. They're deciding when to sell it, when to use it, how to leverage it. And so I'm really passionate about an economy where you as the person own your data, where you as the person decide who gets it. Whether, if I want to share that I'm a size 8 shoe size, or I just got a mortgage, or whatever, I think that should be my decision. And I think the profit from that decision should also be mine. The financial rewards should also be mine. So I could do a whole discussion just on that because I'm very passionate on that topic.
I love that. And ditto an explanation point on everything you just shared. And, you know, those individuals that are aware of what's happening with their data to have the opportunity to control that and monetize that, you know, is liberating and great that, you know, grateful that you brought that up. And similarly, when I came across the same data sets as it related to the percentage of diverse voices in this space, I too was shocked. I just couldn't believe it. And it just really added more fuel to my fire to continue to try to educate as much as possible and create opportunities of accessibility. So thank you for that. And speaking of finance, Natasha, and share your passion for frontier tech. And if you can also include why you became interested in Web3, the need for more diversity and equity, and the need for better ownership or fair economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Black woman building a fintech company, and I have been building businesses in fintech for over 5 to 7 years at this point. And the need continues to be the need. We need more women, we need more diversity, we need more people of different thought and from different places. Because we're building a new economy and we're building new things that we've never built before. And we're creating solutions to address some very specific pain points that we've had, whether it be in finance or whether it be in traditional day to day of how you live your life and get your everyday activities done. We're facing this new world where we are building things in Web3 and beyond to basically replace or supplement what our everyday life is looking like, which means we need enough people that have those different lives to be a part of building these things, so that things can be built in both an organic way, a useful way, and a thoughtful way in a pre-decision manner versus an afterthought. So a lot of this that I am hopeful of in building is that there are a lot of more people coming to the table and trying to understand what's happening in Web3, what's happening in crypto, what's happening in blockchain, and starting to learn and take hold, I think, of ownership of how they educate themselves and how folks start to learn a bit more, because people want to build and be a part of this space. It just actually seems daunting, and it all can seem very confusing and can all seem very difficult. But the first step is taking that step. So I say all of that to say, my finance career started very untraditionally in the sense that I always said I would never work in finance, and fintech was also under that consideration. I started my career in corporate America working very much on marketing, communications, and strategy, along with mergers and acquisitions. And as I was in that world, I realized that part of the reason I never wanted to enter into finance was really because I felt that I needed a very specialized degree or I needed a very specialized education to be able to understand what was happening. As I started to get into finance, I got into fintech under the guise of financial literacy, really with the focus of using tech solutions has to make understanding this industry easier, and tech has to be one of those ways in so that people can better understand. So one of my first companies was focused on how we provide the education for people to understand what alternative investments are and how they have a role in folks' investment portfolios and what that means for the future. So a lot of the work that I started doing was how do we break down these barriers, make things a lot easier to understand, and start creating resources and tools so that people can better take ownership of their financial future. And that was in the traditional sense, before crypto became a very big part of people's lives and continues to grow as in importance in people's lives. And as we continue to see the cryptocurrency market grow, it's very important that people continue to learn and start to figure out how to operate in this world, because digital assets is not something that we see going away. It's more so a matter of how active and when you will need to be fully active in the digital asset economy versus an if. Where years ago, the question was if this was ever going to be a real possibility. We're now at the stage where it's more so about when and how are some of these solutions being built. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth in this industry. And I think the key is making sure that we have a lot of diversity of thought, region, race, experience, and everything so that we can build the right types of solutions and be building in Web3 in a very thoughtful way.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. There are a few things that jumped out at me was, your mention of financial literacy as well as the importance of how we build. And you're absolutely right. It's not a matter of if, it's when. The train is here. I often say the train is in the station. You could choose to get at the beginning of the train, the middle of the train, or the end of the train. Or you also have the option of not getting on the train and waving as it goes by. But the most important thing is to know that the train is here. And as it relates to literacy, we know that, some of the barriers in this space is the intimidation of just the language in and of itself and how we are able to educate, individuals and how quickly we can do that is really important. And then you add the next layer of finance where there's a lot of fear that surrounds finance. So to have innovators like yourself in fintech and helping increase literacy is extremely important. And then going back to your point about building, this is a great time to bring Anoop to the forefront to share his thoughts as someone who is building the infrastructure within Web3. Anoop, why did you become interested in Web3, and why do you feel diversity as well as ownership, better ownership, is needed?
These are all great questions, and going back even before I got into the blockchain space, what if I play back my career, I've kind of always been doing some kind of decentralized, heterogeneous, secure kind of infrastructure projects, right? And so for me, it was just a natural evolution that you know these decentralization, distributed computing, databases, cryptography would come together as kind of core components that make up blockchain technology. And these are areas that I've been doing for 10, 15 years before I got into the blockchain space. And and so being a real-time distributed systems engineer, for me it was natural, just natural that this is how systems evolve. This is how infrastructure will evolve. And so when I started the question, or I asked the question initially back in 2014 when I was at Cisco, it wasn't that I had just happened on blockchain and crypto or Bitcoin and crypto at that time. It's always been part of my thinking and my mindset. And so to see this formalization of these orthogonal technologies that really came together to create the whole blockchain space. Uh, Again, for me, it was just a natural evolution. So, you know, and then when I did ask the question of what would Bitcoin look like if the fabric of the internet, switching and routing, were blockchain aware. That's when we started uncovering other questions, right? And then I think part of the journey here is not necessarily coming up with the answers, but at least asking the questions that you may not already have answers to, or asking or identifying questions that you didn't even know to ask to begin with, right? And so that's been the learning exercise for the first part of my blockchain or digital assets journey. But consistently, what I was really concerned about in the early days, and still today to a degree, is to the points here, uh, a still a genuine lack of diversity in our space, right? And that is, I believe, holding us back. It's not just what is the male female ratio, but where do people come from in the world, right? And how do we include their experiences as part of the journey to define this space? So it is about true diversity and bringing together the experiences that make for in my experience, when you have a diverse team, you end up with amazing products, amazing services. And so when we built the blockchain business at Cisco, I had probably one of the most diverse teams in the company at that. And the product that we had built, the technology that we had built, the use cases that we were delivering on were truly out of this world. And I haven't really seen a lot of projects have kind of that kind of an impact. And I think part of the challenge is has been a lack of diversity. Um, and so, as I look at the space moving forward, one thing I would say is, I think we're now starting to recognize that we need more inclusion in this space. But I also, from an educational perspective, there are things that just aren't really being taught in universities anymore, right? So, formal verification is a critical tool to be using in this space. Uh, but I can't remember the last new grad that I'd hired that actually had a formal verification course in their curriculum. And in a space where we say, the code is law, right? That's kind of a little bit worrisome for me, right? And so, formal verification is a process by which software is inspected. It's inspected for compromise, for maliciousness, operational efficiency, compute resource consumption, what have you. Um, and that's generally not being taught anymore. And so that I think is going to be a gap. And as we look at how that will impact, the application of this technology as an infrastructure layer, right? I think we're going to have a little bit of heartbreak, but I think in the end, as we kind of realize some of these gaps in our training and education programs, that we're going to have the opportunity to fix some of those areas. And so that's where we look at kind of the work that we're doing at the Ronin X Foundation by reimagining what infrastructure. I mean, at the core, where you're actually managing, packets. How do those actually, and how does that, that new infrastructure that is packet aware operate in a fully decentralized way? And so we're super excited to be advancing some of them as well. Pause there.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and you bring up a good point as it relates to our current educational system not preparing our students, in a way that they can quickly jump into this space. And having students in college, I could attest to that, and even the digital media programs really aren't, training the students on the programs that I'm aware of that are 3D designers in the metaverse are using. So there is going to be this huge gap, and that's something that we can be intentional about as we continue to build out, right? And as you said, bringing in diverse individuals and backgrounds and experiences and cultures from around the world, you're going to have these ideas, this melting pot of ideas that are able to spot these gaps and quickly come up with innovative solutions. And of course, as we create these solutions, we have to protect these solutions. Paul, would love to hear your perspective. Why Web3? Why diversity and inclusion? And why do you feel the need of ownership?
Thank you. And at my very core, I am an engineer who likes to solve problems. And I tend to look at technology as a medium for expressing myself, and various technologies as tools in my arsenal. And with that said, when I look at blockchains, they bring up a unique ability for individuals to really coordinate without barriers. These can be barriers of age, location, gender, race, and even coordinate pseudonymously or anonymously. I think this unique ability and the various ripple effects or impacts this could have on the world at large is what really attracted me to the space. And I truly believe this can unlock ways of problem solving at a global level that wasn't possible before. And we're starting to see a lot of it taking shape in the initial stages with the formation of DAOs who are trying to tackle these problems globally as a collective unit. And I'm excited to see where all of this ends and also contribute to the space. And that's precisely what I'm here to do.
I love love that. And I'm happy you brought up DAOs. And anyone in the room that's a creative entrepreneur and has worked with freelancers from around the globe during COVID or pre-COVID, if you are currently in a DAO community, it feels very similar, right? And then you're adding these tools of Web3. But I love the fact that at least the DAO communities that I'm a part of, you show up as you are with your gifts and talents and appreciated for those gifts and talents. And then you have a layer of a tokenized economy within that and smart contracts as it relates to governance. So love that you brought that up. It's going to be and continue to be a really, really, really big force in the coming months and years. So thank you for that, Paul. And within a couple minutes, I would love for each of you to address this. And the next question is, with the rise of frontier technology and crypto commerce, there is a shift from traditional exchange-traded funds, ETFs, to digital assets, a so-called emergence of crypto ETFs. So Natasha, let's start with you. What is meant by digital assets? What is the individual array of benefits and niches of digital asset ETFs in contrast to traditional markets? And again, we're going to get to everyone. We're going to try to get the answers out in about a couple of minutes. So I'm going to start with you, Natasha, on that.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll do a very high level view here. When we talk about digital assets, it's probably a good understanding of it's a very big catch-all umbrella term that literally means digital assets are files that are created on digital means or on electronic means or computers, right? So this can mean anything from your PowerPoint files, your photography, illustrations, animations, audiovisual spreadsheets, anything files that you have saved on your computer, to things including cryptocurrency, including DeFi products, including your staking, your yield, your earning. Any of those mechanisms also are part of digital assets. So digital assets is definitely a big catch-all. So that's one thing to understand when you're hearing digital assets in the media. A lot of what they're trying to focus on when they say digital assets is more specifically looking at the cryptocurrency market and all of the products that exist within digital assets as a form of cryptocurrency. So when we look at crypto assets as a subset of digital assets, we're talking about the cryptocurrencies that you may have heard of: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, tokenized assets like NFTs or CryptoKitties, any of those that you've heard of, and even things like investment strategy products in crypto, which is something that companies like my company VegaX offers, and other companies like Bitcoin ETFs and other products that you've heard of. So those very much sit in this crypto asset world when we think about digital assets and then crypto assets as a subset of that. And then, of course, within crypto assets, you have an array of types that can be anywhere from payment tokens to non-fungible tokens, NFTs, as we talked about, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, stable coins, governance tokens, other utility tokens. So within this cryptocurrency kind of class, there are obviously a number of different types of cryptocurrencies or tokens that also exist. So it's important to understand, I think, the layers of the fintech meets crypto world to better educate yourself and understand how things are being built. Because the next stage of financial products, which include potential ETFs and other digital asset-based products like that, will be built upon a lot of the foundation of the crypto asset work that has been completed. So a Bitcoin ETF is obviously an exchange traded fund based on Bitcoin. What does it look like when there is a Dogecoin version of that? What does it look like when we are very easily able to include portfolios of crypto assets in your traditional investor portfolio? So these are a lot of the questions that are being explored right now in the world of TradFi meets hopefully the future of DeFi. And that's traditional finance, TradFi, DeFi, decentralized finance. And there's this big gap in between that. And right now we're very much living in the early stages of that gap, where we're trying to build the solutions to help better set the stage or the foundation so that we can build the digital asset economy a bit stronger and in a proper way with the right kind of safeguards and risk procedures for both investors and companies as they enter into the space. And there is a lot of more work to be done. And we're still very much at the early stages. So this is why I think that there are a lot of people actively building and focusing on different verticals within digital assets and crypto assets so that they can build the right solutions for the number of needs that are going to pop up, which are anything from moving the crypto to custody or holding the crypto to actually accounting for the crypto. So there are a lot of different elements that are also popping up here. But I am hopeful that we have the right folks that are figuring out how to optimize or transform what we know works in the traditional financial world and optimize those solutions in the right manner to support the digital asset economy.
Thank you for that. And I loved your illustration around the gap between what's considered traditional and what we have now as decentralized. And your team, as well as many other innovators, are looking to bridge that gap, create that connection point so there's more adoption more readily and more powerful tools. I like to say 2.5, right? So we have Web 3, Web 2, and then Web 2.5. So we need more builders bridging those gaps. And speaking of accounting for your cryptocurrency, Paul, would love to hear what you'd like to share as it relates to this question. I think you may be muted.
Sorry. To me, great question. Digital assets to me are electronic files of data that can be owned and transferred by individuals. They can hold value. They can hold assets like artworks, content, videos, documents, and anything that we can put a key on. Now, this brings up a very unique ability for us to uh, implement using technology, where the velocity at which things can move is something very unique, and that opens up a from a systems design standpoint, that opens up a wide array of products and wide way of doing things that wasn't really possible before. So I think we're starting to see we're in the very initial stages of this unlock, and it's exciting to see where all of this ends. And a lot of it boils down to entrepreneurial and engineering creativity as well, to see what is going to happen. So really exciting stuff, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I agree as it relates to, we are so early. For those of you that are, I love history and sociology, so you step outside the bubble and if you just take the observer role on what's going on and how fortunate we are to be a part of this time in history and see this unfold and actually be a part of the unfolding, right? So we are part of creating this future. So thank you for that, Paul. And Sandy, being intimately involved with digital assets, would love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the discussion that 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 the team had on digital assets really, did it really well, which are, digital assets are the way of the future. They provide that ability to use tokens to vote, for example, in a DAO to exchange value like art or music, to have utility like a domain. A domain is also a digital asset. And really to drive the new economy. In fact, many call Web3, I call it the ownership drive, but many call it the token economy because a token is a digital asset that allows you to implement and execute utility, value, function, excuse me, and even voting as well. So I think that obviously digital assets are really, really important. Because they're so important, though, that for me means that, again, the diverse voices need to be heard. We have a lot to do on several fronts, scalability, ease of use, standards, cost, to make it accessible for all. My big mantra is Web3 should be available for all people, not just a certain subclass of people. And I think that that can be made true via the way that we handle, manage, and innovate on those digital assets.
Thank you for that. And I love how you shared the fact that a lot of people are referring to this economy as the token economy, tokenizing everything and using tokens, in all aspects of what we're doing as a use case for blockchain. And, something that comes to mind when you share the accessibility of digital assets, what I find a lot of times when speaking to those individuals outside the space is trust. And there's still this need to create trust around digital assets. We can't smell it or see it or touch it. And not everyone in the space is acting with integrity. So how do we also increase trust to increase adoption? And so I'm going to pass the mic to Anoop to share your thoughts as it relates to digital assets and the contrast between ETFs and physical markets.
Yeah, I think these are all really good questions, and I think in my mind, a digital asset is more than just kind of a representation of value from a monetary sense. Going back to the work that I've been doing in the IoT space and blockchain, a digital asset can represent, you know, uh, an electric vehicle. A digital asset can represent, a charging station. It can represent, one of the great use cases that we're seeing for one of the startups that I advise, Iotex, um, you know, sweat to earn use cases. So, your digital asset is, built into your smartwatch. And kind of the data that you kind of accumulate, the facets of that data, each facet can actually itself become, its own digital asset. And so the idea that, a digital asset is strictly and solely a financial instrument is, in my mind, kind of a limited way of thinking about the problem space. I believe that, you know, there will come a time where, every human being on this planet will actually own the digital asset of themselves. Like, what is that digital twin that you know changes based on the context of my environment? So in my work environment, I express a different persona, or a different facet, or a different configuration of my digital asset in my social contract with, an employer, versus the contract that I have with, my personal community, right? And so the power of thinking like this is that, we end up with models where, you know we can create digital twins of ourselves and in different industries, in different contexts, and have these digital twins effectively perform business on our behalf continuously, right? And that's where the real power of, the digital asset, I think, really comes into play, especially when you start thinking about kind of the value and the power of, smart contracts as they're evolving. So, I think we need to abstract away the notion of what is a digital asset, and really asking the question. In the crypto space, I think everybody in the U.S. would agree that we all want to see a Bitcoin spot ETF. But as someone who is going to be contributing in this industry, participating, helping build, not just myself, but everybody who is involved, why can't we all have our own? Yeah, right. Why can't we all be our own market makers? And I think that's where the real opportunity is. As we think about how does this space scale, what are the things that we need to, tackle in terms of either technology, whether it's performance or scalability, throughput, user experience. These are all things that are kind of holding us back at this point. But that's just because, this is where we are in our journey in this space. So, I think the one takeaway that I would like folks to go home with after this is, don't think of a digital asset as just yeah, a crypto that is holding some notional value, but think of a digital asset as something that is far more expansive and can be monetizable. And as Sandy pointed out earlier, the real critical thing to nail in this space is identity, right? Because with identity comes the ownership, and from that ownership comes, any of the facets of digital assets. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, great point. And we see that um, as Natasha pointed out in the very beginning, and how Anoop closed it up, is that if you think of an asset, which is something that holds value, and you think of anything that can be digitized, and you put those two things together, right? So it can be something within the financial realm, art realm, real estate, cars, etc. And you think about ownership, and that the blockchain allows you to show the ownership and transfer of ownership. And so we're really just scratching the surface with our current use cases. And if you just strip it down to the most basic definition, then you'll be able to use your imagination and how these various forms of digital assets are going to affect our day-to-day lives. So thank you, each of our speakers, for your thoughts there. I'd like to give a closer look at challenges, such as the data breaches and phishing attacks across the crypto and NFT industry. For example, among the recent cases, 1.7 million in NFTs stolen in apparent phishing attack on OpenSea users. Tether lost 31 million in tokens as a treasury wallet was drained by an external attacker. Crypto.com admitted it lost approximately 35 million in a recent cyber attack. The personal data of more than 7 million Robinhood customers was compromised during a massive data breach at the trading platform. An attacker used social engineering. The Ronin blockchain that powers NFT game Axie Infinity has been hacked, and around 600 million worth of cryptocurrency has been stolen as a result. Despite the fact that blockchain was designed to be highly secure due to the visibility of blocks, hackers are becoming more and more creative in obtaining private keys to the blockchain and using them to initiate withdrawals. Therefore, my question to you all: what should exchanges, crypto and NFT platforms, and Web3 solution builders prioritize when it comes down to cybersecurity and the protection of digital assets? Anoop, let's start with your answer.
It's a great question. And over the years, we've seen a lot of compromises, a lot of hacks. And I can't tell you how many customers I've spoken to over the years where they would ask a simple question, right? If I move systems to blockchain, am I secure? And the answer is no. I mean, what blockchain provides is data integrity, data immutability, and the immutability of the process. What you feed it and how you protect it at the fringes is still critically important. So, you still, as a consumer or operator of blockchain technology platforms, you still need to adhere to the best practices in cybersecurity. Being able to, secure at the perimeter, be on the lookout for data exfiltration, uh, and what have you is critically important. And a lot of people will say, hey, why would a hacker or a bad actor use crypto for money laundering? Because it's all trackable and they'll eventually get caught. And that is true. It is all trackable, but the velocity with which the money can move is astounding. It's orders of magnitude faster through the fiat ecosystem. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of bad actors really innovate, right? And I do want to use that word specifically because while we think of ourselves as innovators in this space, the bad element, the malicious element, are just as innovative, and we can't forget that. right? And so the evolution that I'm seeing is, traditional ransomware, malware, cryptojacking, crypto phishing is starting to incorporate smart contracts in as part of that tool set. And I go back to, yeah, again, my time at Cisco, the seminal body of work that defined the cybersecurity category in the blockchain and digital asset space is work that was done by the Talos Group, where they identified, they worked with law enforcement, they identified a threat, a crypto phishing ring, and they were in a, they used kind of a novel technique around the identification of that ring and how these assets were being accumulated. Um, and the net result was, the ring was busted. Individuals went to prison, but what we saw out of that was, uh, a lot of sophistication by hackers and hacking groups, far more sophistication than I think people would even have given them credit for. And so that, I think, is going to be one of the things that is going to be a consistent kind of thorn in our sides, is the evolution of the threat landscape and how it is also starting to use many of the digital asset technologies that we are looking to build and grow into an industry. That would be my kind of uh, take on this. And I'm only seeing kind of the threat landscape expand as we innovate in these new areas.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the innovations of the bad actors, because you don't normally think of those two things together, but you're absolutely right. And I love how you highlighted that just because it's blockchain doesn't mean it's secure. We're still early, we're still building, we're still learning. And it's something that we need to remember as creators and as educators. So thank you for that. I would love to pass the mic to Sandy to see your thoughts on this issue.
Yeah. Thanks so much again. And, I would like to maybe approach this in a little different way. I think my colleagues have all talked about, we're still early and we still have things to do, and we do. But I would also remind us of what goes on in the physical world. So I was just reading an article. Over 50% of all physical art that's on the market today is considered false art. There's some forgery on it, wrong person, an extra copy, something like that. Um, Music is stolen at a rate of 64% year over year. And then if you look at sports memorabilia, 70% is fraud. It says it has a signature by Joe Namath on it or whoever, and it's not really his or her signature. It's just a great forgery. And that's in the physical world. So I know that we have a long way to go here, but I do believe that blockchain offers a chain of ownership using the ledger that I still think is very solid. Maybe I would even argue more solid than what happens today in the physical world. And then, if you look at Web 2, the same kinds of security hacks occur on the Web 2 side as well. I don't have the factoids on that. But I do think that sometimes, we talk about, like Ronin with Axie was robbed of this much money. But if you think about, how many bank robberies occur or how much fraud is done, was just looking at a stat, $60 billion worth of fraud on credit cards today. $60 billion. So I do believe we have a long way to go. Please don't mistake that. I think we have a long way to go in Web3. I do think blockchain is a promising technology. It's not all there yet. But if I compare it to some of the stats of physical art, physical music that exists today and what's already happening in the world, I am hopeful that blockchain will actually be able to reduce fraud and help security as we move forward. I'd love to know what others think about that as well. What do you think, Nova? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I love the facts that you shared as it relates to art and the fraud that exists in art and sports and music. And when you do look at the numbers, if you're comparing 60 billion with a major hack of 600 million, there's still a huge spread there. And, we're talking about ownership and transparency of ownership, which may not always equal security, right? I mean, if it's digital, it's breachable. There's going to be hackers, just like as soon as we went online, we had, what was it, McAfee, whatever all those
Yeah.
security protocols you have to add to your software, right, in the computers. So I do feel that we shouldn't necessarily poo-poo on it, but pay attention to it, to be intentional in how we're building and creating and seeing these obstacles and knowing, there's someone that I know that's on the A team and blue team as it relates to a tech company, and you have the hackers and then you have those that are preventing the hacks. And so both teams are trained to work together within a tech company so they could be prepared on having just stronger security. So there are ways to kind of work through this problem. And I do feel that, as you mentioned, Sandy, some of the numbers are really striking that you gave in comparison with the real world and some of the examples I shared on the digital side. So thank you for that. So this is a great time for Paul to jump in. We're talking about security and hacks and phishing and losing all kinds of money. What are your thoughts? We have two perspectives on the floor. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I'm glad we're talking about this question. I don't think it gets the focus it should. That said, I think metaverse definitely opens up, as Anoop pointed out, a very ever expanding attack surface that constantly keeps evolving. And at a very high level, I see two categories of security attacks that can hit Web3 or metaverses. The first one, I would say, all the security threats we've seen so far on the internet in Web 1 and Web 2, these range from viruses to ransomware to data breaches. All of those threats, I would expect to see them in Web 3 as well. Now, we're obviously going to see them being customized and replayed to the metaverse context or Web 3 context, but the emphasis on security awareness and cyber hygiene in general, I think will go a long way for this category of threats. Other than that, I'm also going to, I think we should expect emergent security threats. These are threats that we haven't seen before. These would what be very metaverse or like Web3 native security threats. From this, something like an avatar theft to device-based attacks, I think there'll be a wide variety, and they will truly test our ability to react fast, and having an incident response plan and pretty much being prepared and expecting these emergent new security threats would I believe go a long way. If for all the builders and founders working in the space, I think overall it will really help to get a few things into perspective. That is, once building security right at the foundation layers and having security baked in from the start. In the tech industry, they call it shifting left, which pretty much means from the design phase, you take a holistic security and risk focused mindsets as one of the lens through which you're looking at building in the space. Other than that, definitely recommend studying history. When I say history, it's in terms of internet security, and pay attention to the lessons we have learned over the past, so that we can incrementally improve and improve quick. Uh, I also think as an industry, it also helps to have open information sharing and collaboration when it comes to identifying threats and working together on security issues. We have some of this already going on, but I think there's a lot to improve and work together as a unit on this. So as everyone on the panel has pointed out, I think Web3 has vast opportunities and can unlock a lot of things in virtually every sector. But realizing this opportunity will really depend on how much, as an industry, focus on making cybersecurity and privacy a priority overall.
Very interesting. The shifting left mindset. Definitely going to bring that back to the team. And being aware that, these are things that you have to sort of build in from the foundation. I feel there is this very kumbaya culture within the decentralized community of builders where there is this innate sense of trust and transparency and, let's rise together, let's build together, let's co-create together, let's support each other. And security may not be at the forefront of founders and builders' minds. And, it's sort of, if you're thinking about the problem, are you creating it? Sort of there's that sort of perspective. Or are you just saying, hey, like you said, looking back at history, this has happened. There are going to be individuals, innovators that are going to use the tech for this, purpose, and we need to prepare for that. So I think those are some excellent points. Thank you for sharing that, Paul, and love to hear insight from you, Natasha, as well.
I don't have a ton else to add here to what our other panelists have said. I think that you hit the nail on the head in terms of the need for continuing, I guess, to keep our eyes on the ball with security measures and what that means, and that, moving to the blockchain isn't enough. To Anoop's point, like, that's exactly it. Like, that does get you away from certain risks in the traditional sense, but then opens you up to a new set of risks that become that much more important to stay cognizant and focused on how there is this ability to basically have a 24-hour clock of monitoring and maintenance and being able to respond accordingly, which, is very different in the crypto world because it never sleeps, right? It never turns off, and everyone is participating 24 hours a day. So that exasperates the risks that much more. I think from my perspective, another element here that's very important is really traceability and the work being done by companies like Chainalysis that allow you to be able to trace where your Bitcoin is coming from and how it has been used. Because obviously, crypto has some nefarious and bad actors in it, which means that there are crypto that has been gained from bad actor reasons or nefarious places. As a result, it becomes that much more important, especially companies that are dealing with wallets or maintaining custody or transacting with people's crypto, understanding the risk of being able to trace back that crypto to ensure you're not using blacklisted crypto or that there isn't any negative associations with the crypto that you're accepting. That, I think, is something that will start to show up a bit more as more options for people to utilize their crypto pop up, which I think becomes even more important, that people are focused on security and risks to ensure that things like this are a part of policies and the way that folks are reviewing any crypto coming in, or the way that they're actually managing any crypto that the company deals with.
Amazing. Can you hear me? Amazing. Thank you so much, Natasha. And we're just going to jump to my last question, and then we can open it up to Q&A from the audience. How do you see the future of Web3, crypto, blockchain, and metaverse domains in 10 years from now? And we will start with Paul.
I would say I'm pretty optimistic and have no doubt in my mind these technologies will be the base layer powering the internet and the way we interact. And also, I think it'll be pretty seamless to use. All the everything to use in the metaverses and Web3 would be as seamless as the internet today. And I also believe it will be pretty seamless to build and really unlock the creativity of entrepreneurs to solve a lot of problems, and definitely looking forward to that.
Thank you. And I'm going to conclude this question with Sandy, if you can share your thoughts, and then we'll open up the floor to questions.
Yes, thank you. Well, I see the future as well, like Paul, very optimistically. I'll just speak for a moment about, what I see with identity. I would say that today my favorite application for digital identity hasn't even been created yet. I think we're still in the throes of it. I think in the future that digital identity will include your healthcare records, which will automatically be protected. You'll have your own appliance in your house. Management will be so easy that you'll be able to manage the security of that data. So no longer will you be told, like myself, I just moved from one city to another. I couldn't even get my own healthcare records. I had to send them to another doctor or another hospital. I would be able to see all of my data, keep all of my data, and be able to distribute that. I see education records being carried around with me as well. My daughter just took a class at a community college. I wanted to get the transcript so that I could send it to her university when she goes to university. And I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but they asked me to fax it to them, a request fax. I had to find a fax machine, which I haven't used in I don't know how long. I faxed it twice. They lost it. Then I had to snail mail it because they said they had to physically see my signature, which was again crazy. It took me 4 months to get her transcript for one class at a community college that I can now use. So in the future, I see my digital identity having my diplomas, my certifications, my skill sets that are all validated on the blockchain. So I think in the future, digital identity is going to become much more important than it is today. It will be used in all sorts of apps that I can't even imagine today. But I know that ownership rights and putting the power back in the hands of us and not in the hands of government or corporations will occur in the next 10 years.
I love that. Thank you. And it's interesting that you brought up healthcare and education. So yeah, there is definitely something coming on the healthcare side. I'll be happy to share as that continues to develop as it relates to being able to own and move your data. And, anyone that has dealt with trying to get your transcript from prior schools, you know how painful that is. And so
Yeah.
these are revolutions that are coming, solutions that we may be overlooking. And I appreciate both of you sharing your thoughts on that. It was so wonderful to hear all the diverse perspectives from each of our panelists as it relates to security and digital content and what is the meaning of Web3 and where we're going. And I would love to now open up the floor to our audience to ask any questions to our speakers right now.
And if I may suggest, first of all, dear guests, please clap a C on your keyboard, show love and support because this discussion it just blew my mind. Woo-hoo! Show love. Thank you so much.
So Eve, thank you very much to the incredible panel. I'm just sitting here taking a lot of notes and learning as I go. So thank you so much for this very inspirational and educational discussion today. I have a question which is, I think, related in this space, and maybe Sandy or Natasha or anyone really to help me here. I think a lot about access and accessibility in Web3, and we had a conversation a few weeks ago on this topic, but related to secure digital assets and that content management. I wonder what your thoughts are in terms of enabling access to persons of all abilities in the metaverse and the Web3 environments. I think Eve already mentioned I'm representing Women in Tech, the Netherlands, and I'm managing director of a digital transformation firm here and working with global clients on their transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kara Antoine. Who wants to take this question?
I'll go first, if that's okay. Thank you so much for that. And thanks for all you're doing for women in the Netherlands as well. So I started a group called Unstoppable Women of Web3. And our mission is all about educating women and diverse groups on this next generational technology. So that's our sole mission, is education and making sure that women are educated. as we move forward, as well as all diverse groups. We want it to be equal, democratized, and a decentralized future. So we have launched a whole set of classes. We've done so with over 80 companies. So our group is really supported by, OpenSea, Polygon, blockchain. I mean, you name it, the who's who of Web3, plus Google Cloud and Deloitte and Altair. Some of these new, newer Web2 companies who are getting in Web3. We do Twitter Spaces twice a week. We do YouTube Lives once a month. We post education from our sponsors, and then we do in real life events as well. So we'll have a in real life event at Consensus, which is down in Austin, Texas, the oldest crypto conference in the world. We will do another in real life at NFT NYC. We have one coming up in Abu Dhabi. We have one in Paris, in Singapore. We just did one in India, in real life events as well. So our mission is to train and educate women across the world with this free education offered by our groups. If you guys want to go out to the site, it's Unstoppable Wow 3, unstoppablewow3.com. We also, though, have a Web3 site, Unstoppable Wow3.x. The reason we had to do a Web2 site is that none of the search engine criteria works yet for the Web3 site, but we wanted to make sure we had both. And I'd love to chat with you later as well if you want to know more. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, for that.
Thank you.
Love what you're doing, by the way. I want to talk to you as well. Natasha, did you want to also address the question?
Sure. I think that the resources that Sandy mentioned are wonderful. In terms of, I guess, the general numbers, and accessibility is a huge issue and part of the reason that I think this industry was created. So 1.7 billion people in the world are deemed unbanked or underbanked, which means that they do not use traditional banking infrastructure to do much of anything. They don't have a bank account, they don't have a checking account, they may not have credit cards. So they're operating in the financial economy in some other shape or form. What crypto and digital assets and blockchain technology have allowed are for the significant group of the population to now be able to interact with a financial economy in a digital means without ever having a foundation of banking status, if that makes sense. So this creates a huge unlock for and accessibility, because traditional banking infrastructure was built with a number of barriers, including identity verification and other elements that costs and fees, etc., that also make it difficult for people to participate in the traditional banking economy, which is why there is a significant population that is deemed underbanked and unbanked. As a result, these solutions are being created by some of the people who are unbanked or underbanked. So that in itself, as you can see in this world of using that lens of diversity.
Those digital solutions are being created by those people who are underbanked.
Sorry, what was that? Might have been some feedback in itself. But yes, the last thing I was saying is that those solutions are being created by the folks who are actually underbanked and unbanked, or the folks who had difficulty entering to those systems. So when it comes down to accessibility, the cool thing is that we're seeing some of these people who face these problems head on creating these solutions. And as a result, they're being very thoughtful about how they create these solutions and are putting accessibility as one of the forefront elements, because accessibility has traditionally been something that has been very difficult and has prohibited people from being able to enter and participate in economies like this. Now with crypto and digital assets, it makes those drops those barriers down significantly, and then allows people to participate in more of a meaningful way. And I think that the future in this industry will see more of that. And it's about, again, having more people at the table to build, so that we can make sure that things are being built in that manner.
I'll add a couple of notes onto this. It's an interesting story. So I was about to leave to go do a keynote. I was doing a keynote in Switzerland a number of years ago, and my then then 8-year-old asked me, why I was going, and trying to pull the child guilt trip on me. And I said, look, I need, I have things I want to say about this space. People are inviting me to talk about it. So he asked me, so what is blockchain, right? And so I started giving him a description of, this whole new economic framework that's being built and how it's being built on proof of work, and explaining the consensus mechanism, and how we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and on and on and on and on. And he looked down at his watch and he said, I'm 8 years old. I don't have all day. And you know, and then in an English accent, he said, when one is to profess expertise, one must do so in simple English. And so that really got me thinking. And it's a comment that has stayed with me for many years. And my observation is that we still haven't simplified the language with which we use to explain blockchain technology and Web3 and metaverse. And so that's that. I think that education and simplifying that education is going to be critically important for broad scale adoption. I don't think we're there yet. And the way, the mental model that I have on how we explain blockchain is, well, we actually don't use the terms decentralization or blockchain or crypto or cryptographic secure serialization of transactions. We don't use any of that. What we use is, how do you create a secure environment where it's safe to do transactions, because you have transparency, you have the ability to see what everyone else is doing, you have automated accountability. So when you do decide to participate in a community, you are held accountable to the standards of that community. And once you have that in place, now we can talk about how compliance rules can be built. Right now that you have accountability automated, you now have the ability to kind of drive rules so that there's enforcement around that. And only when you have all of that do you actually really create a sustainable operating environment for everybody who might be involved. And I think that's the message that I've been kind of using over the last number of years. And it's resonated because I didn't use decentralization in any of that. I didn't have to explain what decentralization was. Didn't have to explain what blockchain or crypto was. But these are kind of the tenets that I think we're all trying to build towards. And I think if we get more people who are able to explain what this space is about in under 5 minutes, even how some of these consensus mechanisms work in under 5 minutes, I think we'll see a huge leap forward, and probably a further Cambrian explosion in growth and development here.
Thank you very much, everyone. I will clap my actual hands. This is so unique in Vijenders. I would like to say thank you for not only the time given, we actually out of time at this moment, and you stayed here sharing your expertise and your knowledge. Also, the interest I would like to acknowledge of our guests. We had more than 300 people watching over Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the channels were streamed on. They didn't manage to get into the metaverse, but hey, it's a new frontier experience. You still need to learn how to navigate your avatar. It takes time. Evenness is very proud to be at the forefront of innovation, despite the fact that sometimes it's challenging, sometimes it's hard, but we're pushing the boundaries to bring the innovation forward, as well as social justice, diversity, inclusion, and ethics, whether it's AI or frontier tech or name it. So therefore, thank you so very much for coming today, and let's rock and roll. Enjoy the day. Have fun. Clap, clap.